Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our June 2nd parent webinar. The topic of this evening is college academics. We're joined by the Academic Affairs team to share many resources, perspectives, and tips as you gear up to support your college student. And by way of transition and recognizing your new college students, I want to congratulate all of our students and families who are celebrating recent high school graduates. In the chat, folks have shared that some of our students have already graduated, and others are graduating soon in the next couple of weeks. So congrats. I know that amidst so much that's happening and the checklist items that your students are working on, it's important to celebrate these milestones too. So a special shout out to our students who are getting ready for their first semester of college. How exciting. And we hope that you continue to celebrate with them. I suppose I'll let our speakers introduce themselves when they get to their parts. My name is Mateo. I'm the community manager. We may have already met in our family welcome call, so it's great to see you back here again now on this specific topic about academics and specifically college academics. As we mentioned in our family welcome call, every month we'll have a thematic webinar to get you prepared for different topics as you transition to support your college student. So this month is all about academics. Of course, that's a timely theme considering course selection closes on June 12th. That's next Friday. And your student is perhaps attending one of their Campus Connect events where they're connecting with their channel partner representative, either this Thursday or in the weeks to come. I know every channel school has a different sort of date that they're hosting it. So on this theme of academics, we've offered this space to answer many questions you might have about academics and also give you space to ask some more questions so we could start the semester with the utmost clarity. A couple things that we won't cover in our session tonight. First, we won't cover any specific questions about financial services. So I know that the June 1st deadline just passed us yesterday. If you still have some questions about payments, please feel free to share those with financialservices@vertoeducation.org. Our team is working hard to answer your questions there. We also won't be answering any specific questions about things like packing lists or what housing looks like on your student's site or how to mail packages, because all that information lives already in the location resources page. So as to make this session most productive for everyone, we're going to go over topics that are relevant to all sites. I encourage you to continue to look at this resource here on the location resources page for you to be prepared with other questions you might have about your students' experience, both the general experience here where you can check out the academic calendar. We just uploaded the new parent handbook, lots of general health and safety guides, but also specific to your student's location. Lots of great content there. And lastly, we won't be answering any visa questions. I have heard from our student visa team that we are tracking well for our visa process. I acknowledge that it can be a nerve-wracking experience to send a passport abroad and wait for it to come back or send it to the consulate. Rest assured that we're still tracking on great time for visas to come back. So I will just request that a little bit of patience as your student onboarding advisor if they have any updates. Otherwise, we're still tracking very positively for our visas, and you can continue to use the visa resources that we also have on our location resources page. There's some guidance there as well. Okay. And lastly, before I give the mic to our academic affairs team, I just want to reiterate the snapshot of where we're at in our pre-departure process. So you see we're about halfway through now that we're in June 2nd. We just passed the tuition payment deadline of June 1st. And you'll also notice in May and in June, which is where we're at, some upcoming deadlines include course selection, which closes on June 12th. So please make sure your student has selected their courses by then. We have course selection office hours happening this week and next week. Should your student have any questions, the link for that is in the weekly checklist email. This is also a great starting point for your student to apply for academic accommodations. And we'll share a little bit more about that process later. But just keep in mind, this is the ideal time to start that checklist item. Some other items that you'll see that are timely is booking travel. So this is where your student should be looking for their round trip flights and uploading those into Verto Connect so we know when to expect them on arrival day. And lastly, as I mentioned, official high school transcripts. So as your student graduates high school, they're going to want to reach out to their registrar if those official high school transcripts don't automatically get sent out, and make sure that we have their official high school transcripts on record by sending that to registrar@vertoeducation.org. That is a requirement of U New Haven to have all official transcripts on file before the start of the semester. So please help us by supporting your student in getting those transcripts in. All right. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Stephen to introduce himself and share what we're covering tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mateo. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen James Mokler. I'm Verto's Assistant Director of Academic Affairs. And today I'll be going more in depth about what your student can expect while participating in our academic program and how you can help them along the way. So first, we'll talk about some mental shifts you might need to navigate as you turn control over to your student. Our unique model, what kinds of conversations you might have with your student at key points in the semester. And finally, we'll have some time for questions at the end. Next slide, please, Mateo. So I've been doing these presentations for 4 years now, and I can safely say that I think this is how many of you might start to feel right now. So as your student closes out their high school experience, they do their elementary walks, they celebrate Ivy Day, they have their bed parties, all of these examples that you just shared in chat. They're preparing to transition to college and college abroad, no less. So you may start to feel this tension. Everyone sees their baby walking across their graduation stage in a cap and gown. And so you might remember coaxing them onto the bus. And then now you'll be the person who's holding on to the luggage counter and them not wanting to see them go through TSA. But luckily for you, we have a new resource available that Mateo mentioned that can help you manage some of those jitters. So next slide, please, Mateo. So our new parent handbook published by Student Success is filled with tons of great information and advice related to how to become a learning partner for your student. So my presentation is going to focus in specifically on academics, but the handbook covers a range of different scenarios. Perhaps most importantly, it features the stories of 10 plus parent alumni. So you'll be able to get perspective from parents who sat in these presentations before, just like you. And I'm sure Mateo will post a link in the chat, but you can find these under the general section of the location resources page. So thank you, Mateo. So as I share my information and advice with you over the next 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes, I'd like you to keep the 2 quotes on the screen in your mind. So first, never give up what you want most for what you want in the moment. And if you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes the sacrifice. For those of you who have been in a presentation with me before, you may have heard me joke that we are Verto Education, not Verto Travel LLC. So while one of the most unique things about our model is that it happens abroad, it happens while studying abroad. And I think these quotes highlight the tension a lot of students and families feel while participating in our program. So compared to a typical college freshman, however, your student has decided to start college differently. And this program may represent the last opportunity to continue at a college that they have really wanted to attend for a very long time. So the key to getting there is to study and to make sure that the excitement of the moment isn't getting in the way of the actual long-term goal. Next slide, please, Mateo. So one way that you can think of these shifting roles is like you're riding a tandem bike with your student. So for a long time, you've been the person who's been at the head, being a strong hand, steering, helping them decide where you're going to go together. And then as your student starts college, however, these roles have to shift, and you must shift from manager to mentor. So your student is the one who is in charge, literally and legally, not just figuratively. And for your student, this is an exciting time where they're gaining confidence and they're learning what it means to be in charge. And we're encouraging them to take charge and complete these items independently in preparation for continuing at their channel school. This is probably a big shift for many of you on this call because your student is going to be very far away. You can't structure their time like you used to, and you'll need to rely on their judgment at first blush as they encounter and navigate problems. And so this isn't to say that your bikes have completely separated. We're not at that point yet, but your student your student might get bogged down in navigating these things day to day. And so your advice will be critical to provide that perspective to remind them of their long-term goals. Next slide, please, Mateo. So you'll see in the parent handbook, and we talk about this a lot, is that we want students to thrive in their discovery zone. And you're a key partner in helping them get there. So the first step out of the comfort zone is into the stretch zone, which might be uncomfortable at first, but successfully navigating it can lead to big rewards, as you can see here on the screen. So you will also probably travel through these zones as your student progresses through the semester. So next slide, please, Mateo. As we look at each part of the semester, I will share examples that illustrate what it might look like for a parent traveling through these zones. These are examples that are based in the real experience of Verto parents and students, and we'll look at the different responses. So the comfort zone is probably how you would have handled for the problem for your student in high school. And the stretch zone often reflects a kind of panic response to encountering this new formation of responsibilities. And then what we're trying to guide you towards is the learning and stretch zone areas, where I will have topics of conversation and suggestions of how you can mentor your student through that particular struggle. Next slide, please, Mateo. So let's zoom. I'm going to do a lot of zooming out and zooming in, zooming out and zooming in. So first, zoom all the way out. Let's look at the 60,000-foot view of both the student and parent academic experience timeline. So currently, you're in pre-departure. We're encouraging students to be independent. We want them to be solving these logistics, completing these checklist items on their own. Next, from the time they finish their virtual onboarding at the end of the summer through the first week of classes, your student is going to start meeting their on-site support system, and they'll get even more info about what their life on site is going to be like. And in this turn, they'll be focusing on adjusting to their new country and classes. So they might disappear for a little bit, but I promise they will come back up. And so moving into midterms, the study or lack of study abroad will become apparent as classes become real when midterm grades get issued. And then finally, when they reach the end of the term, hopefully they will have successfully leveraged that support system to continue on whatever path it is they were hoping for at the beginning of the semester. They're preparing for finals, their transition plans, or potentially coping with things that didn't go quite as planned. So next slide, please, Mateo. For you, the parents, you've already begun this shift from manager to mentor. And hopefully you're encouraging them to own those pre-departure items like we've discussed. Once they're on site, we really encourage you to encourage them to take advantage of Discovery Week activities fully and to start making connections with staff. And then once they start to receive their course schedules and syllabi, it can also be a good time to talk about any planned travel that you might be excitedly discussing now, to make sure that it's not going to interfere with schoolwork or class attendance. And so, like I mentioned, your student might feel overwhelmed right then. So it's always good just to check in to see how they're managing the workload and how they're adjusting. At midterms, encourage them to use their on-site resources and be honest with you about whether or not they're getting off track. So you can remind them that they're capable, and as we'll go over to in a few minutes, that they're still able to adjust any missteps that they might have made. And then by the end of the term, be ready to celebrate. Again, it's important to have those honest conversations about any adjustments that your student might need to make to their final plans. But regardless, they will be transformed by this semester abroad. And so we want to make sure that we're encouraging them to finish strong, and then also to follow up with Verto about any last minute questions related to resources, et cetera. So pre-departure. Now that you have the lay of the land, we're going to dig deep into each part of the semester, starting with understanding how your student is categorized. This slide might be familiar to you if you have been in any of my presentations before, but I think it's a really good reminder. So all students are enrolled full-time at the University of New Haven. Upon successful completion of the semester program, they are most likely going to be a second semester freshman, first semester sophomore. Most students can participate in Verto for 3 semesters, and then participants must maintain a cumulative 2.0 GPA to continue with Verto from semester to semester. So a 2.0 is a C average. If your student is a channel student, they often have higher requirements, minimum requirements. Next slide, please, Mateo. So here are some of the systems that we use. Again, many of you should be familiar with these, at least your student is familiar with them. So the website is filled with tons of great information. Verto Connect is where students access their checklist items and get a lot of information that is personalized to their track. They will complete their coursework as well as be enrolled in their first course, which is Academic Start, which is our academic onboarding course where they complete the math and language placement exams, as well as receive additional information about other academic resources. And then finally, since they are students enrolled with the University of New Haven, they get access to My Charger, which is the student portal there, where they will apply for academic accommodations and view their grades, midterm and final grades during the semester. So next slide, please, Mateo. Just really want to highlight the importance of My Charger when it comes to applying for academic accommodations. They don't automatically carry over from high school, and so the process can take a few weeks. So we really encourage your student to get, if they are looking to continue their academic accommodations in college, that they get on this process ASAP. So, and if you have any questions about it, this is managed by Student Success, and you can reach out to the Dean of Students, whose email is here listed. So
yeah, just one extra step on this one too. We created a YouTube video that details the academic accommodations process. That's available in Verto Connect. So if you log into Verto Connect with your student, you won't see this in the parent portal. This is just for the student view. But if you're logging in with your student, and you click into the academic accommodations checklist item, you'll be able to see the step-by-step process. It does include submitting sort of a documentation from your student's primary physician to sort of document their request for an academic accommodation. And it also will include a virtual sort of welcome call. And so the sooner that your student starts the process for academic accommodations, the sooner that they'll have those in place by the time that they arrive on site. So please make sure that you check out that Verto Connect checklist item for any additional information about academic accommodations. And of course, if you don't see the answer there, you're welcome to have your student reach out to Dean of Students. All right, thanks, Stephen.
Yep, thank you, Mateo. Next slide, please. So manager to mentor, pre-departure. Again, you might be feeling this right now. In that comfort zone, you filled out the camp application. You made sure, that everything was set when they were going off to camp or ballet, et cetera, et cetera. And now your student, we really want them to be in charge of these items. But you might have a panic response and try to log into their portal and complete their items for them. Really kind of work through that. And then, like Mateo just guided through with the accommodations example, sit down with your student, ask them to log into the portal, look at it together, ask them those guiding questions about, what is this? What does this mean? What do we need to do? And then come up with a plan about how they're going to accomplish that and really start to put that ownership in their hands so that they're learning and discovering and becoming more self-sufficient. So next slide, please, Mateo.
Actually, I want to answer one question that Kimberly put in the chat that says, will you be talking about how Verto keeps an eye on the students' performance considering they're diving neck deep, not only into college, but into the international environment? Pre-scheduled check-in meetings as an example. And the answer is yes. We actually, in the parent handbook, if you go into the student support systems section, we give you detailed information about what the on-site experience looks like in terms of support. We also highlight this role, the student success advisor, who actually part of their role is to host regular check-ins with your student. Several of those are required. One of those is required at the beginning of the semester. So please encourage your student to attend their required one-to-one check-in. We have a 100% success rate on getting students to complete these, but it's helpful for you to reiterate that message. And so the answer is yes, we are keeping track of students' performance, and we will be proactive when we see things that are potentially sort of getting students off track. In the same token, we expect students to raise their hand when they're struggling or when they need extra resources. So it's sort of a mentorship relationship that goes both ways. And we expect students to also be proactive about what resources they might need. Didn't mean to cut you off, Stephen, but I wanted to answer this question that comes directly from the handbook. So I'll pass it back to you.
No, thank you, Mateo. And I think as we get into these next sections, I think you'll see that there is a lot of scaffolding going on inside the classroom and in academics to make sure that students are being connected to the resources they need. So again, looking at add drop, that first week of classes, this time is critical. It's going to set the tone for the rest of it. So think back to the quotes that I shared. This section in particular is going to focus on why it's important to keep academics at the forefront of your mind from day one. So we often describe Verto as a high rigor, high support program because having a successful academic experience is key to completing a college degree in 4 years. So as you can see here, on the left, a number of students who start their degree won't finish, and GPA has a significant impact on their long-term success. And so the minimum GPA to complete another Verto program without restrictions is a 2.0, but we want to make sure that we're helping students to achieve and then being able to take advantage of these positive statistics that you see on the right. So those ones that are related to graduating, finding a job, higher starting salary, and then just pulling it out. There are we hear your concerns. We're going to keep tabs on your students, but overwhelmingly, students who participate in these programs are successful. So 84% of students earned a 3.0 or better in fall 25. Our goal is that 80% of students earn that. And then 82% of fall 25 students matriculated to their channel partner in spring 26. And so that remaining, where's those missing 18%? Some of it we won't reconcile until October, when we process the matriculation data for year-long channel students. And then also students change their mind. They leave the pathway because they want to go to another school. They decide that they want to work. They decide they want to go into the military. Yes, in some cases, it's because the students didn't make the grades, but more often than not, students not making the grades is not the reason why they don't decide to continue in their channel partner pathway. So next slide, please. So Verto prides itself on having excellent instructors. All faculty are reviewed and approved, by our academic provider, the University of New Haven, and they must have at least a master's and 1 year of teaching. We aim for at least 25% of teaching faculty to have PhDs, but in fall 25, that number was 46% overall. And while we think our professors are great, our students think they're pretty great too. So on final course and faculty ratings in fall 25, faculty earned a 4.38 out of 5, being evaluated on metrics like courses taught me to think critically and gave me the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to succeed in my chosen subject. You can also see here on the bottom of the slide some other quotes from participants about the impact that faculty had on their experience. So next slide, please, Mateo. Besides excellent faculty, courses are built to challenge students. We ensure that there is an adequate mix of high and low stakes assignments that ensure that students are getting frequent feedback, but then also having high stakes assessments that prove their recall and ability to perform. Next, we work very much to calibrate coursework across our network, and faculty across locations are frequently in communications with one another to make sure everyone is holding up those academic standards. We want to be sure that if someone takes college algebra in Spain, that they can go on to complete pre-calculus in Florence and then go ahead and take calculus when they transfer back to their post-Verto institution in the States. And so finally, we use experiential and active learning to give students an opportunity to apply their knowledge, not just show us how good their memories are because they crammed on a high stakes test. Next slide, please, Mateo. So the success is built in as well. So like I said, high rigor. So we just went over some of the things that increase the challenge in the classes, but also they're designed to be supportive of students. So first and foremost is the course structure, which is divided into quarters, parts of term, at which point students are supposed to earn approximately 25% of their course grade. And then these skills, they're meant to be scaffolded to be continuously improving and getting that feedback. If you're interested in seeing these described in detail, I encourage you to check out our accessible and inclusive learning policy, which is listed on the Verto website. So what does that mean for your student on a day-to-day level? So again, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in. So we're going to zoom out. We're going to zoom out to the week. Classes are held Mondays through Fridays, starting around 8:30 a.m. and then ending no later than 8 p.m. And then we do have classes that are held on Friday, and they tend to be lab or studio sessions or other highly experiential classes that benefit from that longer time block to get students out into the city. So, excuse me, when you're looking at students, often when they get their schedule, it's like, oh, I have so much time. But next slide, please, Mateo. When you're really putting in the study part of study abroad, that time can get filled up very fast with additional things. So you can see here, I've taken and transposed the real student schedule into an example of how that might start to look during the week. So students are having to be sure that they're budgeting to feed themselves, that they're budgeting adequate travel time, that they're making sure that they are building in study time, group project time. But as you can also see here, it's not all just study all the time. There are open blocks where students can go and do, things that they are interested in, extracurriculars, hanging out with friends, etc. So this is a small example of how a student's week might break out, but you can see that really prioritizing those opportunities to make sure that they are succeeding in their class coursework is very important. And then zooming even deeper onto the day-to-day experience, I wanted to look at what a typical schedule for a class that's meeting 90 minutes a week, twice a week. So this is our most common class meeting. And so you can see on the left-hand column, typical classroom activities that might happen in those periods of time, as well as on the right-hand side, notes about how students are being evaluated or interacting with it. So classes start very prompt, and we have an attendance policy in all of our locations for visa and immigration purposes. Students, their tardiness and absenteeism is taken into account when calculating their participation grades. So in most locations, students who are between 0 to 5 minutes late are marked tardy, and then usually after 10 minutes marked absent, regardless of whether or not they show up on time. But as you can see from the classroom activities, that's actually a key period of time where your student needs to be in class, because the faculty member is setting them up for what they're going to cover in that day. Next, they might move into a lecture section. We aim to have classes be less than 25% lecture time, so that we can spend a lot of time on the active and experiential learning that really gets students engaged, applying their knowledge, etc., what really makes our programs really unique. Most of these classes have a break built in. A number of faculty prohibit the use of technology such as phones, AirPods, etc., during class time, but during the break, they can often use those. Coming back from break, getting into an active learning activity like a debate or maybe a think, pair, share, etc. This can take a lot of different forms. And then finally, closing it out with a group discussion to help make the connections between the activity, the course concepts, and make sure that they answer any questions before students are out for the day. Which leads me into my next slide. One of the ways that you can set your student up for success is having conversations with them now about what is appropriate classroom behavior and professionalism. So this is something that, students, they go off on their own. They are probably influenced very much by TV, media, movies, where you don't have to show up, or, you just have to take the one big exam and do really well on it. But really, like I said, ad drop sets the tone for the rest of the semester, and students need to be aware of what is appropriate when interacting with different groups in a diverse setting, and then emphasizing appropriateness, of professionalism, appropriate dress, and timeliness. And not just showing up on time, but making sure that you stay for the duration of class. Like I showed on the previous slide, there are breaks built into these 90-minute class periods. And so, getting up and leaving class for 20 minutes is not appropriate, and students will miss out on instruction and then be penalized for participation. So I know this might seem very remedial and very much like, yeah, of course, but students semester over semester engage in these kinds of behaviors, and it has very deeply serious negative consequences on them, their grades, their performance, and the classroom community, right? It's not respectful to the professors. It's not respectful to their other peers. And so making a point of having that conversation now before they are out of sight will hopefully come back to them when they are locked in during the semester. So, manager mentor. So this is an example. Your student forgets to submit their ad drop request and is enrolled in a course they don't want to be enrolled in. So in high school, you might have emailed staff asking them to be removed and then letting them enroll in a different course. If you reach out to staff for this kind of issue, we are blocked by the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act from discussing specific student records. And even then, if we were allowed to discuss this with you, the student would have to initiate the change. So you might get frustrated being told, please talk to your student. This is something related to FERPA that they need to handle. But if you are prepared now to advise your student that they review our policies on what to do and then reach out to their SSA to resolve the problem, that would be a great learning, mentoring moment for your student to take ownership of their experience. So, midterms.
Actually, before we transition to the next topics, I want to give you some questions that are coming in from the chat here. So, yeah. Stephen, one question was, I was curious about the phone usage policy in classes. What is it? Our high school really struggled with developing a policy and enforcing it. So I wonder how professors in Verto handles no phone usage policies in class.
I think that they have similar struggles, but the negative impact is reflected in grades. I don't think professors are afraid to penalize students and be honest with them that their behavior is negatively impacting the classroom community. So they're not going to take phones out of people's hands, right? This isn't, I think in that regard, I think high school teachers have come up with a number of creative solutions like phone jails and like charging things like that. Professors aren't going to do that. They're going to expect these students to behave like adults. And if it becomes a frequent behavioral issue, it can be elevated as a code of responsibility violation. And then we turn it over to student success to, have a discussion with the student and then come up with a plan for how to, address the behavior and behave appropriately. So, that's typically how we manage it.
Okay, thank you. That was the one question.
Okay.
I'll pass it back to you for midterms.
Thank you. Midterms. So this is where we can monitor and adjust. So next slide, please, Mateo. We've talked a little bit about academic eligibility. I want to talk, like I said, at midterms, this is when classes become real. So everything up until this point can feel like a fantasy. Everyone is living their Audrey Hepburn life. Everyone is living their, it is all of that and more, everything. And then reality sets in as you see B-, C, A, and things really start to fall into place as you start to realize, oh, wait, either I might not be continuing for a year because my grades aren't there, or I need to really make some serious adjustments. So from eligibility, they must maintain eligibility, which is a minimum 2.0 GPA. And then if they are below a 2.0 GPA, at midterms in particular, we communicate that to students. So we communicate to them whether they are on track or off track for their channel partner. We, as I said, this is a record that is protected by FERPA. So we won't tell you your students' status, whether they are on track or off track, but we do send a reminder letter at midterms notifying parents that the grades are available to view, and you should have a conversation with your student about whether or not they are on track or off track. Like I said, at midterms, in a moment, we'll go over a resource flow chart there. And so let me put a pin in that, and we'll go over the resource flow chart. But if they are seriously off track, this is at a point in the process where we'll have a conversation with student success about creating an academic success plan for a student, and working through potential behavior changes that they can make in different resources. But if they do fall below that 2.0 GPA still at the end of the semester, they may be eligible for academic recovery, where if they have between a 1.5 and a 1.99. But let's go ahead and look at the resource flow chart. So like I said, parts of term is great because at midterms, they've earned 50% of the grade and there's still 50% left. The glass is still half full. And so if your student is on track, great, excellent, celebrate that, and then discuss with them, what are their success habits? Why do they think that they're doing so well? And what can they do to continue to build on that? And then also, if they are a channel student, that they are still locked into the next steps that they need to take to continue at their channel partner. So there might be a new portal to access, right? There might be a new documentation to submit to the channel partner. So it's very important that students are not losing sight of that long-term goal, right? If your student is off track, again, cultivating that open, honest communication from the beginning so that they can be honest with you and they can feel like they have that support from home is going to be really, really important. And then these are some of the resources that we make available to students on site. So first and foremost, working with the student success advisor. There's someone who your student can discuss academic policies with. They can understand the course withdrawal process if necessary. And then they can either talk with their SSA about developing an optional success plan, or if they're very off track, it might be an official success plan where they are very closely monitored to make sure that they are making progress. But the SSA is a wonderful resource. Faculty, can't overlook the faculty. They are the ones who are responsible for issuing grades. They're the ones who see how students perform day to day. They're the experts, right? They're the experts on why a student earned a bad grade on a paper. So encouraging students to get over their fear of talking to adults and going to speak to their professor after class or making a point to attend office hours. We also very much encourage students to take advantage of peer tutoring. So this is available in every location. They can learn from other students who are also enrolled in the same class as them. And that can bring down the barrier of, being honest about struggles that you're having. And then also tutoring helps connect students to study groups and other academic resources. And then finally, post-Verto planning. So there is a post-Verto planning specialist in every location who is responsible for monitoring whether or not students are meeting their channel requirements and having conversations with them about contingency plans, et cetera. They work together with the SSA. So reaching out to the post-Verto planning specialist to discuss requirements and developing contingencies if necessary. So next slide, please, Mateo. Thank you. So manager to mentor. So your student earns their first ever D on a history essay that they worked really hard on, and they have a C- in their history class. I will be honest, this is from my life. When I got this paper back, I started to cry. So you as a parent, my parent didn't do this, but if I had been younger, she might have. You email the professor to discuss potential interventions, or you email the dean of students and ask that they be given another chance. And really moving into that learning zone, discovery zone, encouraging your student to lock in, as the kids say, and go to office hours to discuss the essay, as I did with my professor, and make an appointment with a peer tutor to review the writing. It turns out that I had written a wonderful English essay, not a wonderful history essay. So those are those kinds of things where those talking to professors who are expert in their discipline and then going and working with a peer tutor can help your student navigate that big change in expectations related to different college work. And then finally, in this case, discussing with your student, in this imagined scenario, whether or not they should postpone a planned midterm celebration trip until they get their grades up. I think in some cases you can claw back the money and prevent that from happening if you are, paying for your students' travel. But if they are paying for it is always a good, good method to check in about what are those extracurriculars and do they need to be pruned back a little bit if it seems like they are impacting and preventing students from reaching that long-term goal. So also, this is an important point to note, generative AI. So this is our stance on generative AI. At midterms in particular, students may be, may think that they can rely on it. So this is currently covered in our academic misconduct policy. We're currently working on policy updates that will be published by the end of the semester. But one thing that's not changing is that the unauthorized use of AI can be considered multiple violations of the academic misconduct policy at once. Faculty have authority to determine their AI policy in the classroom. We have been using a framework and are going to provide revised guidance to our faculty about how to make sure that they are incorporating guidance about the use of AI at the syllabus and assignment level. And then for the upcoming academic year, the policy is going to include updates that focus on responsible prompting and how students should vet model outputs, as well as a student onboarding module that's focused on the appropriate use of AI. So these are some of the steps that we're taking to hopefully help students better understand how to use the tool in a helpful way and not in a way where they are just typing in, write an essay for me, I have 10 minutes before class. So, thank you. Finals, time to celebrate and reflect. Preparing for finals in your post-Verto plans, again, encourage your students to revisit their resources. I didn't make the point on the flow chart, but students can take advantage of those resources from the moment they from the moment they arrive on site until they leave the program. So making sure that they are aware of those resources and referring back to wherever they can get the help that they might need. And then also at the end of the semester in particular, talking about that one resource that we all can't get back, which is time. So again, looking at those travel plans, looking at your travel plans, and making sure that students are budgeting appropriately so that they have enough time to complete all of their work and get it in for proper evaluation. And then planning for next steps, again, encouraging your students to get in the habit of checking their email in their channel partner portal for any next steps to matriculate to their channel school. We are responsible for sending the transcript, right? That is the part where we know that we are involved, but there may be other requirements from a channel school that we're not aware of, and it will be on your student to take the ownership of making that next step and being aware. Refer to the academic calendar. So you can do this now. We have the academic calendar published under the location resources page, and you can go ahead and put a star in your planner, in your calendar, whatever you use to keep track of dates, to have a conversation with your student at the end of the semester about final grades. And then finally, just keep in mind that next steps might be new steps. So I know that the majority of students who participate in our programs are channel students and are very much currently have in their mind they're definitely going to go to their channel school. But that's the great thing about college is that it exposes you to new ways of being, new ways of seeing, especially doing college abroad. And it is, as you saw from my statistics that I shared earlier, it's not unusual for students to change their mind. But those next steps can be new steps, can be exciting steps. So just be aware of that as well. So last, manager to mentor. So your student earns a B minus in a course due to accumulated absences. Again, your comfort zone / panic response might be to email someone or submit a grade appeal on behalf of your student. Again, this is a FERPA protected record. And then, if you're having conversations with your students on the regular, you might discover that it's from excess personal travel. And so that is an opportunity to discuss natural consequences and then how they can plan to avoid similar situations at their post-Verto school. Well, thank you, everyone. It has been wonderful being the Stephen Show. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Mateo to bring up any questions that he saw frequently in the chat, and then also share any steps to close us out.
Yeah, I think we managed to answer all 25 questions that came in the presentation. I want to encourage anyone that still has a lingering question about this topic, go ahead and share that in the Q&A or any other question related to pre-departure orientation. This is a great moment for us to chat. I also want to give you, in terms of what to look forward to for next month, you'll see tomorrow, in addition to the recording for this event, which I will upload to the Family Resources page, you will also see the RSVP link for our next event. That's all about health and safety. In our recent family welcome calls, we asked you all what would be topics that you're most interested in learning about, and health and safety was a big one. So you'll be joined by our very own Director of Health and Safety to go over topics related both to pre-departure, but also looking at resources that your student has on site in order to stay safe and healthy throughout their program. So that's something that you can look forward to in July. I also want to mention, just for people who have asked, we have a new event that we're hosting called Campus Connect in collaboration with our channel partners. And I want to say not all channel partners are participating this first round. So you're going to want to look at actually, hold on. Before I mention that, I put in the chat the link to our health and safety webinar. So I encourage you to sign up for that. The dates vary for these Campus Connect events. So I want to encourage you to check your email inbox, search Campus Connect, and you'll find it if your channel school is participating. But these sessions are required for your student to attend one session at least. And that's because it's a chance for your student to go over matriculation requirements. We saw many questions about GPAs and how will my student know what are the next steps are to continue their enrollment at their post-Verto institution. This session is all about answering those specific questions. And so if you don't see the answer to your question in the frequently asked questions document that's on the mini site for your student's channel program, it would be great for your student to bring those questions to this Campus Connect event. And parents are also more than welcome to attend this event as well. So I encourage you to participate in those sessions as your time allows. Let's see, anything that I missed? Maybe Steph in the background or Israel that you wanted to mention? We have some more questions in the chat that I'm looking at right now.
Nothing from me, Mateo. I would just remind students and families to please use the location resources page. We have some questions coming in about using your phone abroad, packing list, mail-in package guidelines. Those are all listed under the pre-departure resources section on the location resources page. So I'll put that link in the chat. And those are all things that are specific to your location. They're made specifically for you. So please review that. Similarly, housing, excursions, money, all of those things are also listed on the location resources page. So please spend some time looking those resources over. We create them to assist you, and it'll probably answer a lot of questions that you have coming up. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Steph. Israel, on your end, anything that you saw in the chat that you wanted to reiterate?
No, I think I'm good for now. I think everything has
Awesome.
been answered.
Thank you, everyone. So let me go ahead and drop the parent handbook in the chat one more time for folks to check that out. We will continue to reference this parent handbook as we host our monthly webinars. So you could take a sneak peek if you'd like to learn about what themes we'll be covering for the health and safety topic. If you check out the table of contents, we have information someone asked about FERPA. You can learn more information about FERPA as well here on this page. And I'm seeing any more questions that I wanted to answer. No, I think that is it. So I will, as I mentioned, put the recording of this session on our family resources page, and you're welcome to review it on your own time. You'll be able to see these slides as well. I want to mention maybe other things that are coming up. June 25th is the roommate preference and housing preference deadline. So if your student is still exploring their options, be it premium housing or looking for a roommate in shared housing, that is one of our next upcoming deadlines on June 25th. So something to be aware of. And of course, as you mentioned in the beginning, next Friday is the close of course selection. So if your student does have any lingering questions about course selection, they're welcome to join our course selection office hours. Israel, I believe we're hosting one tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Do you mind putting in the chat the link to sign up for that so that parents can join with students, if you don't mind, so that we can look at those questions together with your student?
Yes, let me get that.
All right. So someone had asked, can we leave this session open for the next couple of minutes to give people a chance to check out the Q&A? And absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording. I'll also